Welcome to United and Independent. We're more significant than ever before, bigger than the Democrats, bigger than the Republicans. But it's not enough to just be registered. It's time to take action. Our goal on this show is crystal clear: to educate, motivate, and unite. We're going to show you the incredible position and power you hold right now, and what you can achieve by standing together. We're not just talking politics, we're making a difference. This is United and Independent. And now your host, Richard C. Ginnity.
Welcome, Political Independents, and I hope a few that I give reason for you to become one. My name is Richard C. Ginnity, and I am the host of this podcast, the manager of our website, and the publisher of our blog. My background, I did have a podcast back in 2009, 2010. My education is I have a BA in mathematics, and I have an MBA with an emphasis in finance and economics, and a master's in business taxation. I also have real life experience, and that has been, I was a vice president and controller for a manufacturing for 4 years, or for 7 years actually. And also I had a private CPA practice for 35 plus years. And in that practice, I was serving individuals, small businesses, and some nonprofits. If you want some more details about me, it's all in the About Host section of the website. So I just recently retired about 4 years ago, and now I'm trying to become a podcaster. And there's plenty of reasons to do so, and I want to explain it to you and then emphasize that this is united and independent. And that united means you and I, not me alone. I thought it would be useful if you learned a little about me and how I got to developing a podcast. And it was a journey. It's not a journey that is just for everybody. It happens to be mine. It's not going to be yours yet, okay? Because you, as a member of the independents, and there is, percentage-wise, there's 38% of the registered voters are independents. That's a big number, okay? So I'm going to give you my story, but your story is as important as mine because it doesn't work unless we are united, okay? Me and you. Okay. So a little bit about me. I was a little bit politically active along the way while I was started late when I was having my practice, my CPA practice. I was frustrated that I saw things I wanted to comment on, and so that frustration lasted and still is until this time. I'm now able to, if you will, tell about myself, but that's not, is to talk about issues on a daily basis through the blog and on 2-week basis through the podcast. So I'm hoping you're going to follow me, but also join it. And that's what the podcast is about. That's what the blog is about. That's where the comment section or communications section where you can call in, leave a message. You can email me, and I'm going to try to read them all. And no doubt, there's no question that I'm not going to bring up something that is important, and I'm counting on you, counting all the political independents out there, that they have a thought how to improve this podcast. I need you. Again, it was being frustrated and feeling I've written letters to Wall Street Journal opinion section. I've written letters to the local newspaper. So I've been out there, but I didn't find an effective means. And so what I found is it was very limiting. So obviously not every letter I wrote to the Wall Street Journal got published. A couple did, but not gobs. And that's frustrating. And this allows me to, on the blog, comment on a daily basis. I read that. I read several newspapers. But when I see something there, I said, this is important. So it may not be as important to create a podcast about or a section of the podcast about, but it's important and it's going to be on that blog. And so I'm going to be there, I hope, out of 5 days. I hope I'm blogging something 3 of those days. That's an aim, because it's so current and so important what's happening now. We are in a critical period right now. If you don't feel it, I hope you agree with me. The parties are a mess. Okay? Their message is not an American message. It is a very isolated message. And so that's why we're talking here to the political independents, because they have ability to change the ball game. So that's what we're here. Now, when I say we, and united is the word, is because it's going to take a lot of us. Whether it's all of us, that'd be great, but a lot of us. And you will find your own way to make a voice. So I'm encouraging you, almost pleading you. It isn't me that's going to carry the ball. It's us that's going to carry the ball. And us, it's going to be hard to beat us. All right. If you want more details about me personally, you can check the website. It's there, the details. Other than that, we're ready to go. Let's go. Our goal is to explore and to hopefully find a method so the political independents can capture the White House in 2026. We're going to do that by exploring a hypothetical campaign that is run by 2 political independents. Now I'm going to take, and I can't emphasize the word hypothetical enough. It's not real. Nobody's notified us. Nobody's asked us to do this. No political operator, or anything else. But I'm going to pause here to read you what I'd call a disclaimer. Okay, let's pause. Okay. This is the disclaimer that I talked about. I have absolutely no connection to an actual campaign. Not financially, not sponsorship-wise, not personally, or through any personal friends or associates or family. And so any person mentioned in this hypothetical campaign is just for example purposes. Get it? For example purposes only. Thank you. Let's start our journey. First, we have to talk about strategy and overall about the strategy that I'm suggesting. First one, we want to emphasize unity. So that when we read united and independent, that united stands for something. So nationally, we're talking about the political independents, which are currently 38% of all the registered voters in the nation. And that is more than the Democrats, which is sitting about 34, and the Republicans, which are sitting at 29. And the difference is all the smaller political parties. So we want to take advantage of our majority, and we also want to recognize the power that potentially could give us. So to get what I believe is a winning number of voters for the 2026 election, we need to obviously get a vast majority of the political independents. We also, and I believe we can, pick up at least a marginally significant, I would say 5% or more, of the Democrats that are now identified as Democrats, and also 5% of the Republicans. That's our goal, because I think, that could create the potential for a winning ticket. Now you say, well, you're never going to get a majority. And that's a fair question. But now you think of that Republican candidate, which could be Trump at this point, and you think of the Democratic candidate, which should be Biden at this point. Do you really think they're going to beat a a truly independent, joint, and legitimate candidate that's offered to them, I think half the nation is just seeking that exact situation. All right. So we've got to do it as a United States. So let's talk about what a potential ticket could look like. This is potential, and remember, it's hypothetical, okay? But let's pick a Democrat and a Republican, because that's what United would stand for, if it's going to stand for anything, okay? So I'm going to say the requirements for that candidate is that they have to be a known Republican and a known Democrat. And when I say known, they have to be looked upon as either potential or qualified to be a president. And I'm saying both the vice president and the president candidate in our ticket have to be qualified in your mind to be, yeah, they're qualified people. So I'm going to mention some names, all hypothetical, mind you, but they're known, okay? On the Democrat, I'm going to mention Manchin, okay? He's already declared that he's not running for his Senate office, and he's going to explore, or he's going to visit the around the United States, talk to political independents. Traditionally, that's a prior travel to figure out if he can run and has the money and et cetera to run. So we're going to select him, and he's I think, a defined moderate. He's not certainly on the left side of the Democratic, and he's indicated and performed as an independent, in my view, of the party. Not trying to say he's totally opposed to the party, but in certain areas, he was independent. So that's why he's selected. Now we can't jump over to the Republican Party. Well, there are a few Republican who have declared themselves independent, or Republican-leaning, right-leaning, whatever you want to call it. But we're not selecting any of those because I don't believe they qualify as having your agreement that they are currently presidential candidates. So I'm going to select three. You'll know the names. And remember, this is hypothetical. So I'm mentioning Nikki Haley, okay? I'm mentioning Chris Christie, and I'm mentioning Mitt Romney. And right now, I'm not selecting one, okay? So think in the terms of your dream ticket and which one. And at this point, I'm going to make the Republican the vice president candidate, not the president. The president would be a Democrat in this case because I think he's a Democrat, which is important because he has to combine with a Republican. And I believe he could be a good president. I also believe the three I mentioned could be a reasonable president. And this is the first time that I'm aware that we would announce that ticket right off the bat. Okay? I'm not saying they wouldn't have meetings separately to agree, but it is critical that we start out with a ticket. Now, Democrats have a ticket, okay, or we think. It'll be Biden and Harris. Trump tends to not mention that, and in my view, he's always made the vice president a weak link. That there really is there's only one boss in that ticket, and it's him, and that's his only one voice, and he makes all the decisions. All right, so that's also part of the reason why I'm doing it. But I also think that this joint ticket is what I would call unique, and will draw some interest, some personal interest to say, what's that all about? Okay, and why did they go there? So that's why I make it the first principle. Okay, next. The ticket has to be defined early, okay? Because they know what's coming. There's no surprise. There's no, who's the vice president candidate? And he leads up to a convention which is boring, and they roll a lot of excitement. And who's the vice president? And you don't know who it is. And now you've got very little time to find out if he's or she is qualified and really looks like, if the case of trouble, heart attack, accident, whatever, the president is no longer there. Do we want this person to be the legal and next president in that case? Now, I think we've all had a hard time with the Democratic vice president this time. We weren't going to go in there, but I think most of us have. We have no clue what the vice president with Trump would be. And in his history, he has always called what I'd call not a obvious presidential candidate. So we want that answered now, and that's a plus for us. Okay, next point. We need a required agreement. Okay. Now, when I say agreement, that is between the two, between Munchin and one of the others. They have to get in a room and formally agree to certain things. Because what we have to get, let's say in this case, because the Republican would be the second candidate, we have to have a firm agreement between the two, publishable, okay, and broadly broadcast that there is an agreement as to who has what responsibilities. And that has to be obviously fought out is a bad word. It has to be discussed and agreed to by the two candidates. And I'm going to throw in one other occurrence. It would really be helpful if you perceive them as personal friends, or at least business friends. Because I'm of belief that friends don't hurt their friends, and that this is a public commitment, and that we will be looking for them to have a working relationship. Because then, if somebody passes away, or in, let's say our case, we have a person who's 76 years old, not unlike the age of the other two candidates, right? But so the importance of the vice president is critical in my view, okay? And this agreement goes a little farther than that. This agreement says, okay, we've got to agree on the issues that we as a team are going to take on and prioritize. And I've selected 3 or 4, okay? And so that agreement addresses who gets to address that as the primary manager. Obviously, the president will eventually have the ultimate. It wouldn't be seen any other way. But this is agreement between two candidates, man or woman, whatever. It's between two people. And they say, okay, and let's take a hypothetical on this. I'm going to mention 4 issues which I think are hot and will stay hot for a foreseeable future. Border is probably the number one in most people's mind. Debt is an issue that's driving us out there. Also, Ukraine, I put in that avenue because it's coming on like whether we're going to back it or not. And I put it in there because our country has promised. And I say, and you'll say, Biden's promised. No, Biden was speaking for our country. And I believe it is very, very, very important that our country will back up what it says. Okay? And Biden is the person who is right now saying what we are and stand for. And if I was South Korea or Taiwan, I'm looking at this commitment, recent commitment by the USA to say, are they really going to stand by us? Or are they going to just stand by us until we don't want to stand by them anymore, for whatever reason? So that's why Ukraine is in there. The fourth thing that I wanted, or the fourth one that I picked up, is this status of our educational system. Okay, I believe, and I think most of the statistics say, we have a deteriorating educational system. And we have had a deteriorating educational system for, 20 years? I graduated in high school in 1964. Okay, theoretically, 63 or 64 had the highest scores in the ACT and the various national testing forever. That's unbelievable to me, given what the resources we have, given what I think are bright people. That's unbelievable to me. And yet the decrease is out there. You can research it as well as I can. So those are the 4 things that I would check and said, we have to have an agreement between the two, a Democrat and a Republican, as what our most important issues are, and that we have a plan for them, and they all have to espouse it. They'll have to detail it out, okay? Enough detail for you to be satisfied that you know what they're agreeing to, and also that they've committed to, and as importantly, that we know who is ultimately responsible for, okay? Or on the first, and we'll say the Democrat has these two, and the Republican has these two, okay? And they'll probably think about that. Probably the border, or frankly, probably go to a Republican, because I think the Democrats at this point are not looked at as a solver of that problem. But this is up to the two negotiators and their strengths and everything else. And hopefully they'll put their aside some politics. And by the way, their advisors are going to hate that. Okay? Their advisors do not like power going to someplace else. Okay? So the chief advisor to the President Biden, or in this case, President Munchkin, is going to say, gee, we should be deciding that. We want all the power. We should, it's not good, for us to have too much attention to a Republican. That's why it's got to be the agreement. And both people have to feel strong that they are good, they're okay, they can work with this agreement. And frankly, they've got to convince their closest advisors that we're going to work together. And don't interfere. Don't play politics. Play that this is a partnership that we've agreed to and we will honor. And where does that bring us? It brings us to real power. One, we've got a known ticket, known people, known personalities, history. And not all of it's going to be good. None of those candidates, and I can mention all 4, are perfect. I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody out there would say I'm perfect. Okay? At least, a couple of you probably would. But anyway, my sister might. But anyway, that is critical to recognize these are humans, but they've been in a leadership spot. They've been in a leadership spot at the state level, at the federal level, and that brings a lot of wisdom, if you will, to the jobs. And it's also a backup. If an older, doesn't have to be older, but if the older Democrat, in this case, a Democrat, has any significant physical or bad problems, and he dies or he gets disabled, we have, and hopefully you will agree, and that'll be your reason why you're voting this way, is that we got a solid backup. We've got somebody who can step up. We don't have to say, oh my God, what if that person became president? We should never be in that situation. And that also allows, I'm going to say this politically, if you will, that if we had that problem, or we don't have that problem, it goes 4 years, and the president decides, I'm through. I want to retire. I'm just tired. And that's fair, folks. That's a grinding job. Okay? Then we have a candidate that can step up. But if he steps up on the next ticket, okay, then there's going to be a strong Democrat right there. And that was really an original notion way back in the founding of the parties when they formed the president and vice president, that the vice president would be a member of the other party. And that way they would work together at some level. And that's all we're working for. I'm not saying they'll always agree. They won't. Two brothers won't always agree on every issue. How can we ask 2 strangers, 2 different men, 2 different women, a woman and a man, to agree? It's not going to happen. What we want is 3 or 4 that they know they agree. They prioritize it. They know they've got to do it, and they're promising to deliver. They're promising 4 years from now, there will be a positive difference from our administration. So that was the agreement. The next one is, to some extent, we've answered it, called the role of the vice president, because that's new. I don't think it's generally been discussed, but now we've elevated that role. And now, would I love to see their offices adjourned? Yes. Physically close? Yeah. And over and somewhat isolating them from their own political advisors. Because political advisors tend to say, I want to gather power here. And in fact, they often want to become a power. They're not the president, but don't they go on the talk shows? Do they bring out the vice president that often? I haven't seen it, no. And all of a sudden, they're really political, if you will. And this addresses that if you treat that I'm hiring my second in charge. And that's the two candidates you've got to be convinced that in this case, Manchin is honorable and is committed and is really saying, this is my number two. Okay? And I'm not going to be hog-wild by my political advisors, and they're not going to come in between me and my vice president, because it is critical for us, for the vice president to take on two issues and do a great job and have significant changes and improvements. And we don't want it it's going to be politicized. You know it's going to be. But you can control that politicization. You can say, well, we are not going to be controlled by political consultants, okay? And people that are behind and, who are leak, people who don't want to identify themselves but leak this and leak that. We want them in their office to be together. So that's my argument for that. Thank you. That's what I propose is a proposal. Proposal to highlights of the commitments that this political independent candidates would agree to. And now what I'd like, because I have a podcast and I have places where you can communicate, I would like to hear your comments. And because it is a situation where it's united, which means more than one, okay? So it's me, yes, but it's also all of you. And I can't emphasize you more than that. This effort to make a break on our current system, but not break a break. Democrats' initiatives, Republican issues are well known what their traditional issues are. It has gone berserk in my mind. We have a Democratic Party that is, right now it's called the woke party. We got the Republicans now, they're just all Trump. And there are a lot of Republicans and a lot of Democrats that don't like it. They're being a little bit silent, but we want to give them an option for the words, well, there's nobody else. What do we do? I'm a Democrat. I've got to vote for them. I'm a Republican. I've got to vote for them. We want to make that not legitimate. We want to say we've got a third choice. And that third choice is not perfect, but it does represent our values in general, and specifically the problems that we have got to address as a nation in the next 4 years. So please, through the comments on the podcast and through the blogs, give me your best. And there's a telephone call. If you look at the website, and there's means of communications. It lists telephone numbers. It lists an address. It lists a number of means for you to communicate. Please be generous with your time and your efforts. I believe, at least I hope, this is very important to you. It is very important to me. And I hope we can make a difference, and we're not going to be alone in making the difference. I'm not a professional politician. I'm not a professional podcast creator. Okay, so you're getting just what Richard Kennedy is all about. You're not getting a professional. So I'm not going to be doing everything that say, well, if you're really professional, you should do this or that, or this is what you should be doing. It isn't going to happen. This is a two-guy effort. It's me and my newly found friend who's doing the camera work right now.
Hello.
Yeah, and we'll later on, we hope to get a little bit more friendly with him, but, he's a new guy and he's young, and us old guys don't warm up to new guys very, very quickly. But it'll happen. I guarantee you. He's a funny guy. And he's, for the girls, he's handsome too. So we'll get there. And tall and single. So we'll get there. But so that's kind of where we are for the first podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it. And there'll be an ending wrap-up that you'll hear. And we hope to see you next week, and we hope that you join in, because it'll be it can't miss from being better and more developed and answering the questions that you'll have by commenting. Now, I have a plan as to try to address some of those that are obvious. How will it operate? How would this administration operate? That's a legitimate question, and we're going to try to address it on the next podcast. So that'll be about 2 weeks from now, and in between is our avenue of communications on the blog. So we're going to weave in those two because it's such a long time. Things are happening. Things are happening not only in this issue, but things are happening almost every day that I think the blog, from my standpoint, it bridges the two podcasts 2 weeks apart, and it bridges having an ability to comment on things that are breaking right now. Thank you.
More significant than ever before. Bigger than the Democrats. Bigger than the Republicans. This is United and Independent. And now, back to your host, Richard C. Ginnity.
Hi, we're back, and this is the first segment that we've used, the segment called Diversion. So that's, I think I explained that, but just in case, it's not necessarily related to the main topic, but in this case, it is. So I want to announce a disclaimer, because this disclaimer has been reworked in the last 24 hours because of something we discovered regarding AI. And that's what this whole thing is about, and it's going to probably continue for several days or several versions of this going forward. So just wanted to tell you that it may have some diversions from reality, if you will, or whatever, that we fact checked by somebody out there, but it's the best we could do on 24 hours, and we thought it was so important that we said we'll risk that. So let's go. We, just by happenstance, 2 days ago, happened to ask AI a question. It couldn't come up with the answer we thought, why not? Since they've spent, months or years collecting the data? And this data we thought, why wouldn't it have? Okay? But we checked it again this morning, and it didn't have the answer there. So let's go to the question and see what you think. We asked the question of, can you, AI, answer the specific number of independent or unaffiliated voters registered for the 2020 presidential election in Minnesota? Sounds pretty straightforward to me. It's not who voted. It's just who were registered that way. Okay? It answered, voter registration data can change over time. Okay. And the most accurate and up-to-date information would be available through official reports from the Minnesota Secretary of State or reliable election bases. To obtain precise numbers of independent and unaffiliated voters for the 2016 election in Minnesota, I recommend checking official election reports. That makes sense. But then this is talking about January or for the 2020 election. Then we said, well, let's look at 2016. It's okay if they don't have the latest. We got the same exact answer. They don't have it. And they gave it virtually word for word, is that it's not available to us yet, or ever, perhaps. They didn't say ever or yet. So then we went even further back, which to 2002, and they couldn't tell that answer either. They said it's not been allowed to us, or it's been restricted in some fashion. They didn't say it's not available. Not available to AI. They didn't say it's not out there, because they say you can get that information from the Secretary of State or reliable election database. That's what AI is supposed to be. Collecting all that information from around the world, in this case nationally, and giving you a summary answer. So we have, AI has just failed. And yet, that's a failure based upon something that is clearly public records. And yet they've claimed they cover all of those types of databases. And yet we just by happen chance found they don't. That's why this podcast and this discussion of AI, of this portion of the subject of AI, we thought was really important and current. So, in my search, and prior to this, of course, I went to Wikipedia. Wikipedia has the history of being an independent, sponsored only by contributions of readers, not required. They get people who write in and say, this is what you should say about this, and it's checked, and it's verified by other people reading and said, oh, that's wrong, and sending in corrections, okay? But it has been, and I know it has been criticized, but I don't think it can come up with any other source of reliable definitions for various terms or people or facts or machines or anything else. So I went to Wikipedia and I asked, what about AI? And they gave me 30 pages, 40 pages on AI. Okay. But they determined, I'm looking at it, I apologize, but they went and defined ChatGPT. What does that mean? Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And of course, they have and then they talk about chatbots. He said, this is a chatbot developed by OpenAI and launched on November 30th, 2022. Based on another technology, another vocabulary that you might run into, large language models. And again, they explain what they are. That's very helpful, okay? That source, an independent source, non-AI validated or filled in the information, because apparently AI can write any document you want about any topic you want, like topic of chat-generated pre-trained transformers, what it can and can't do. And I said, no. This is going to be an absolute requirement and goal is to keep a source, already reliable source of independent information on anything AI generates. And it's not going to be checked every moment, but it's not going to be smoked. Okay? And now I'm suggesting, a lot of things with that. And I'm not going to be a stay in that mode for all my podcasts. But just remember that example. That you and I could get, and they suggested you go to every state Secretary of State and you get it. Why didn't they do it? Because they didn't answer the question. That's why I'm calling it attention. And I'm calling it attention. One of the weaknesses of AI is it can be influenced, and apparently somebody or itself made the decision not to collect it. And I'm thinking, who would do that? And for what purpose? It's a simple question. It's a run-of-the-mill question. But somebody or something stopped it. If you don't think that's important, well, you shouldn't be listening. So that's not fair. All right. So that's, I apologize, I have to put on my glasses to see the next thing. I started all this up about a month and a half ago on an airplane. I want to have a book to read. So I went to the, and even before that, I heard of a book written in a review on Wall Street Journal. If you look in the opinion section, every so often, once a week, they talk about a couple books that they think are interesting. One of those books is the one I'm going to show you. Okay? Recommended. So, The Coming Wave, Technology, Power, and the 21st Century Greatest Dilemma, authored by Mustafa, and hopefully I'll apologize to him if I didn't pronounce his last name correctly, Suleiman, okay? And he has a co-author here too. I started to read this, and it was a warning book of one sort. It was a warning book that says it's the most powerful thing that has been released. That's why it's part of a wave. The other technology that it's creating the biggest wave, and we think, he says, in history, is the advance of biology and what they can do at the molecular level and at the atom level now as to what they can cure, what they can address, what they can answer. And see, that those combinations is the wave. And I would have to agree. So it's a wave. Great. And then comes the concern about addressing the questions that you might ask it logically of what's the best system? Okay. Compare socialism to capitalism. Just it. Not opinion. Just give me the facts. Pour it out. Or will it come to a conclusion? And if you have a certain outlook in life, a certain thing that you liked, tell me it can't be influenced to come to that conclusion. And yet in this book, they talk about you have to teach the machine. It's teach? Who's teaching it? What are they teaching? What logic are they putting in there? Are they putting any logic? Because a computer should be objective. Okay? It should be, boom, this is data. This is the results of this. This is all the reasons why you should be a capitalist. This is all the reasons which favor socialism. And you decide. But I don't perceive that that's the limitations. And that's how I began my questioning AI, and this teaching thing just absolutely floored me. Okay? And I've, again, stumbled on a person who's going in just by chance, a lady who is about to become a master's at a university near here, a very well-known university, University of California at Irvine. She's going to become a master's in computer science. And she is doing her paper having to create an AI application. So I brought up these words, and I said, gee, it seems to be promoting this philosophy, this side of the issue. And I said, why should it do it? And who's teaching it? It shouldn't have that capability. It should come to a conclusion on that. And she said, depends upon your outlook. That scared me too. That means she knows that can be influenced. Scared the hell out of me. I mean, she was a nice person. She was just, I wasn't questioning her that she was 22. I can't imagine a 22-year has dire thoughts on the world. At least I hope not. And she surely never heard that. So that's why I got excited. That's strange. And try to bring you something of that as a warning, as a plea for others to look at this issue, to inform us, to bring it. And I'll allow that I'm wrong. Okay? But it is an important enough question and important enough indications to toss it out to you. And I think collectively we'll get an answer. And I would like you to respond to me in that fashion and try to answer some of those questions. Okay? Can the teachers of the AI before AI goes off, can they influence decisions by raising the score, because it's not that mathematical, but raising certain words to be more influential in AI. So that's it. I wanted to promote this book to some extent, okay? Even if I didn't agree, because it's the best I've seen. And some of that, making it the best, is they had a glossary. And they had what they called a advanced praise for the coming wave. And they listed some very influential people, Nobel winners, Stanford presidents and et cetera, et cetera. And that's pretty darn, I've never seen a pre-publication note like that. So that impressed me. They also included, which is needed, a glossary of key terms. Well, you're talking about, programming. I mean, I don't know how many programmers and system analysts I'm talking to that are conversant and knowledgeable about AI already and knows the vocabulary. I'm sure there's a bunch of engineers out there. Whether I'm talking to them or I don't know. But that's for the normal reader, which I would classify myself as. They had a glossary of terms. And the very first term, which I thought was perfect for a first term in this glossary, was explaining the difference between AI, AGI, and ACI. Clearly important differences of level of attainment. AI is the science of teaching machines to learn human-like capabilities. AGI is the point at which AI can perform all human cognitive skills better than the smartest humans. And ACI, and that's the ultimate, by the way, ACI is artificial capable intelligence and is fast approaching point between AI and AGI, because again, AI is the beginning, AGI is the ending goal, okay, or possibility. But this is ACI, and that is artificial capable intelligence, fast approaching the point between AI and ACI, where ACI can achieve a wide range of complex tasks, but is still a long way from being fully general. So it's saying, yes, certain topics, AI is going to give you the whatever's there and maybe come to conclusions. But it can't replace every job today. And I think that's generally been said. In my view of watching prior and the commentaries I've got from various people that were involved in the programming for 20 or 30 years, is that, yeah, they'll get a lot of that first 3 to 5 years, but then it's going to be 20 or 30 years before they, if at all, they can accomplish that last nudge to accomplish and be at A, which is the artificial general intelligence, is the point at which AI can perform all human cognitive skills better than the human. So breathe, to some extent, breathe easy if you happen to be in one of those areas, and maybe in that not so breathing easy if you're not. Okay, so I wanted you to bring that up. They have a wonderful prologue on how they produce a prologue. They let AI do it. And so I'll read the thing. This is how AI sees it. Question, what does the coming wave of technology mean for the humanity? And they produce just 2 pages. Okay? And you can go there, 2 pages. You'll have to get the book. I won't read it all. I don't have the time. But they said, the above was written by AI. The rest is not, although it soon could be. This is what's coming. And that's how they start. And wow, that was my impression. I think it would be yours. Okay? And they have 4 sections, I believe, 4 what they call parts. And I'm not going to even talk about the names of those parts, but it's the technology there. It is the history of that technology, where it came from. It is the importance of that technology. And then it comes to section part 3, where they say they introduce what I'd call a morality to this data. And that's the scary part, okay? Because they say that moreover, the well-managed country is key foundation of economic growth, security, and well-being. Well, in the general, you say, well, yeah, okay. But it hasn't been, okay? And they say, over the last 500 years, centralizing power in a single authority has been essential for keeping the peace, unleashing the creative talents of billions of people to work hard, seek our education, invent, trade, and in doing so, drive progress. Now, I don't know about you, but my sense of the history of the United States, it did not start off as a well-managed country. And they didn't control the growth. That was the free market that worked. What they did is set it free and say, we're not going to interfere. Okay? And now, of course, if they're hurting people, they're going to interfere like hell. That's what they're for, is to keep the peace and have some courts that will back you up. But that started to scare me, because this is a promotion, very slight, very few pages, but it certainly sounds, and I'm thinking, are you talking about China? Are you talking about Russia? Because that wasn't controlled. China's definitely controlled during their economic advance. Now I'm not so sure, because our friend Z threw sand in that, okay? And certainly Putin wouldn't be called a capitalist or encouraging capitalists, just the opposite. So I encourage you to read it and to some extent be alarmed by it and ask questions about it and insist on knowing some of these answers. And even in the acknowledgement section, which I draw now your attention, I find that this conversation about what should happen in the future was very interesting, because this started, by the way, I should have said it earlier. The author's background, which is why I read it, is that he started an AI company in 2010. Okay, so he's been in it a long time, and he was successful and sold it, I believe, to Google in 2014 for big bucks, and then went to work for Google, and then has broken out and is starting his own new company called Inflection AI. So he's a guy to follow, I believe. And I think you do some research on what he does, okay? But for that guy to leave a Google, there was plenty of money given to him in Google, because I think he was the head of AI in Google, their efforts. He's out by himself, and that's not unnormal. I mean, he's bringing it up because he thinks he has a better idea, and he's going to develop it and sell it to Google again for gazillions. But in the acknowledgement, he talks about a discussion that goes back much before 2010, and then his efforts in that discussion and collection of people of similar thoughts about what the future of the U.S. or the world should be. And I think you get scared. And so this AI development, as he posts it out during the book, was critical. He sort of had gone away from that discussion and that effort, that movement, if you want to call it, and he didn't think it could get done. Too many. And then the AI said, wait a second, maybe it's possible. Or he didn't lose that enthusiasm, I guess is the best way to say it. He didn't lose the enthusiasm for that effort, that collective effort. And I think you should be aware of that, and you should like to understand what the prior collective was talking about. Again, I apologize up front for me having to read this in front of you, as opposed to just speaking to you, and not doing it very professionally. But I guess that's what you have to expect to some extent with me. Because when I get a topic like this, when I said, my God, 2 days ago, wow, that threw away my entire, not entire, but a lot of my presentation. And so I hope you'll forgive me for that. I hope you'll correct me. Okay? And I look forward to being corrected. I will try to give you the corrections and not sit there and go, I'm everything. And nobody's everything. We go back to it's united and independent. United means there's more than one. So it's you and I. And if you can correct me while I have this microphone, that's your job. Or if you can go after other issues in a different way than I'm doing it, that's your job. I hope you join that effort. Thank you.
You've been listening to United and Independent. What separates this show from others is that Richard has the background and experience to back it up. He has a BA in mathematics, an MBA in finance and economics, and a master's in corporate taxation. He has over 36 years of experience as an independent CPA. He's taught at California State University, been the tax and accounting speaker for the Service Corps of Retired Executives, and served as the treasurer for a political party candidate. And when he became a VP, he was the youngest VP in the company's history. He's authored and submitted a California election initiative regarding expanding voter choice. You can find detailed information on his background at the website united-and-independent.com. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten something from it. Make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, follow us on social media. Thanks for helping to make a difference. See you next time on United and Independent.
Well, thanks, Keith, for giving what they call in parlance an extra. But I wanted to then tell you what's going to take place as to the next podcast. So I've planned to podcast on Tuesdays, the second Tuesday of each month and the fourth Tuesday of each month. So that obviously is 2 weeks apart. And in between, I'm hoping to bridge that through the blogs on things that have come up to correct what I just said or to enhance what I just said and other topics that come along. That's how I sort of strategize to keep continuity, because 2 weeks is too long. And so I've got to try to fill the gap, and I think blogging is exactly the way. And perhaps it will lead to me coming back, making corrections on what I said in the prior podcast, or enhancing it. Okay, so now, what do I plan on the next podcast, on the 24th of January? I'm going to continue basically the thrust of this podcast. One, continuing on our mythical presidential ticket as independents. So I'm going to continue that and expand that. And I'm going to try to comment back on AI also in the diversion section. So I hope you join us, and it's been a pleasure to try to speak to you. Thank you very much. Oh, I forgot to add one more thing, and that's why I'm coming back on. For your information, wherever you are or wherever you go to listen to your podcast, and on TV, or not TV, but car, radio, whatever, internet, you can reach this because we are having arranged to be broadcast to at least 15 various facilities that broadcast podcasts. Okay, so hopefully catch it. It should be available, if not on, right soon after January 9th, this coming Tuesday, and will be on, obviously, on our website as a already podcast after that. So you should be able to get it from now on or after Tuesday. So hopefully you'll join us, and hopefully you'll participate. Remember, it's united. See you then.